Hey guys.
Boom.
We are back.
We are back.
This is Courtney from Willow's Bloom, and
This is Ricardo Zivar from the Infinite Soul.
and you guys, his YouTube channel is officially up, so make sure you go subscribe. And today we are going to be talking about some major conjunctions happening in April. So really busy month in April.
The biggest conjunction of the year. And potentially, at least for Neptune's involvement, 150 years. So
It's going to be something noteworthy and going to mark a new chapter for civilization. So we're really excited to talk about it. The first one is not as big of a deal, but it does still hold some oomph.
It's a big deal, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Not as big as a deal as, Jupiter and Neptune, which we're going to be talking about second. But Mars and Saturn is a more frequent conjunction we'll experience.
True.
However, because both of those planets are malefics or challenging planets, they tend to have a really strong impact.
April's a roller coaster ride. This video could be extremely valuable in letting you know, like, this month has the critical essence of changing the direction of your life, your soul's progression, maybe all the things that could come within your journey up to this point. And we're getting to speak on the new moon in Aries, conjunct Chiron. So this is not a drill in my book. Like, this is one of the biggest kabooms we might experience in our lives. And we get one, and that's it. Am I being too loud? Probably. But we need to be loud about this. I'm serious. Yeah. This is wild. I've been looking at this for a long time, and I can't believe we're like here. So.
All right. So we're going to save the juiciest for the second chapter, which you can find in the time codes in the description box below. But we're going to start off with Mars conjunct Saturn, which I mentioned happens every 2 years. And I mentioned also that they're involving the two malefics or the two challenging planets. And I think we can kind of see how things are revving up right now in society and in the world. All these ongoing issues with Russia and the Ukraine and the violence that's existing there. I think it's kind of just putting up the picture for what is about to unfold. So, it's happening on April 4th at 22 degrees of Aquarius. It's exact on that date, but we can feel it now.
Right. I also want to add what makes this conjunction different, and the reason I think it's a big deal, is Mars hitting Saturn is, yes, it happens every 2 years, and it is a malefic conjunction, but when it squares our nodal axis, just want that to drop deeper. I'm not going to lie, this is even more karmic and hitting even more so. If you want to get into the numerology, it's at 22 for all of them, so that can open its own thing. So I think it's a big deal. April 4th is not to play, And also the moon will square that. So I don't want to get into, we're going to get into all the weeds right now, but I'm just saying, like, that is a wild, powerful day for sure. Yeah.
Before we talk about the present conjunction, I do want to mention the last one that happened, which the current one is happening in Aquarius, as I just mentioned, and then the last one actually also happened at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So we can see a continued storyline. It's not necessarily its own thing entirely when we see a conjunction happening in the same sign twice. So the last one happened on March 31st, 2020.
Right.
And what happened around that time?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I think that's really when all the lockdown started, was specifically in March. That's like the 2-week period. Everyone was like, all right, we're just going to do this for 2 weeks. There's something going on. There's something bad spreading. And I think that's just such a typical like Mars Saturn thing. There is something negative happening. And how is it going to affect us as a collective? Did you want to say anything about that?
Absolutely. So, when we experienced the great, I don't want to get far away, but like a long time ago, I'm just kidding. But before 2020, we had the great Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. What I want to talk about on this is that Saturn came into Aquarius while this can happen at 0 degrees. For those that want to get deeper, Jupiter was also on Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. And so there's a restriction on the freedom of people. And this is what I remember from the first lockdown. Mars is the soldier, and there is action that we want to take. And when it comes up to Saturn, I look at Saturn as like the general, basically. Like, I need captain's orders on what to initiate. And so when that happened, that was the full action to lock things down and put that restriction of Aquarius upon people, in my eyes.
Yeah.
So it's a big combo because it's kind of an executive big decision. This is what we're going to do for 2 years, however long it
Right.
takes in that position.
So what you noticed with that first conjunction was that being in the sign of Aquarius, it truly did affect everyone. Aquarius is a like unilateral type of sign where there aren't hierarchies. It affects people equally. It's not like Capricorn where maybe the government is affected or the lower class is affected. And so
not just infrastructure, it's like the sky. It's like everyone that we connect and operate with on a daily basis.
Yeah. It touches everyone's lives. And so we can see how that took place. It touched everyone's lives. And Mars being our willpower, our desire, our ability to take action, restricted by Saturn. That's the most obvious example of how everyone literally could not pursue the things that they wanted to pursue. Is this going to be the same? I don't necessarily think so, given how things have unfolded, because we have to look at the context, right?
Right.
I think with Jupiter and Neptune coming into play, with the war, whatever you want to call it, that's currently happening, I think this could be an issue where we are concerned with certain people who are marginalized, which is also a very Aquarius topic, like the humanitarian viewpoint of who, what kind of group or entity, what kind of group identity is suffering at the or at the hands of someone else.
Right. It's going to kind of reactivate kind of our own individual freedoms in like what is either being restricted or being operated with. The real truth I look at is how we're going to find connection. How are we going to be connecting with people too is also going to be reconfiguring, so to speak. In Aquarius is really like the social groups and the dynamic, your tribe, your groups. How are we trading and bartering in this way? And so if you wanted to reflect upon the past, there was a huge thing with the whole mask mandate and what was like operational and then there was also like during the lockdowns, we had a huge restriction on how we could even interact with other people and other cultures. And everyone kind of had their own unique way of handling the situation too as well. But it's definitely changed the operations on how we found connection. And it was like an executive order, so to speak. Saturn was the authority and Mars is like, this is how we're going to be doing things. And everything's got to be on Zoom now, or
exactly, like which is super Aquarius. So everything turns digital. The way that we interact, the way that we connect and learn about information about what's going on in people's lives becomes extremely digital. And so we can see there are going to be this is a multifaceted type of outcome. So maybe it is centering around kind of what is going on with Russia and the Ukraine, but how is that also bleeding into what we're seeing on social media and maybe even completely different topics like about transgender or other kind of social justice rights that are becoming trendy right now. Those are the things that we can see kind of get spurred up in some type of conflict because Mars and Saturn is a divisive energy. It pulls people apart and makes people clash, or quite literally, we couldn't even see our family, our friends, and there was a literal divide. But there can be an emotional disconnect, a mental disconnect, having different viewpoints. So there's a lot of different ways that this can play out.
Another thing in Aquarius is also there's a bit of an experiment with this too. There's always like some kind of like, we're going to try this is how we're going to solve the problem and try something very different. And usually out of the outcome of all that, a lot of new things get realized within that. I do think it was a lot of benefit to recognize how we can reoperate things on Zoom and move to a more digital age and kind of leave potentially some jobs in some ways that we used to connect that were already obsolete. It kind of cleaned the decks for better or worse and however you want to address that. But I do see like Mars and Saturn is, it's a real time on the collective. We're definitely going to be seeing world powers make some big moves. We're definitely going to see on the way they've operated things. I mean, there's already something to be said about Russia. And I heard that they're going to be working with potentially China and how they work their currencies and their bankers. That may be a potentiality. There's so many things up in the air that could happen in this unpredictable time, but there's definitely going to be a different foundation of how things are being operated. We may or may not have time to even go into this, but things are developing and changing even on this new moon that what kind of gets done is Mars needs to take action. And when Saturn's there next door, we kind of need to make a big decision to solve some real problems, which Aquarius is ready to do, to really kind of like weave things together. So we are, and it's square the nodes. It's going to be a karmic thing that brings up like everyone's trying to make better decisions in connection for our future and to have better solidification to connect with our value. And that can be on your individual day-to-day life or whatever it is moving into the world sphere. But yeah, I think it can be heavy. It can be like lead. It can be like, things you got to stock up on and things you got to take seriously, because it's not just a little decision. Like, I'm going to try this in my life. It's like it could be one of the bigger decisions and risks in people's lives, to be honest. Like, it's that heavy, and I'm being real talk. Like,
absolutely. And Mars is how we generate energy. And so Saturn can create this kind of delay or blockage, and it creates a huge frustration because we have all this energy coming and building, and we need to move forward, but we don't have an ease of expressing that. Like, there's no direct path. And that's why I like that you use the word experimenting, especially with Aquarius, because that is really what's happening when you enter into a situation where nothing that you've tried before is working, or you've never even experienced a situation before. The only action you can take is entirely new, and that is an experiment. And so it's us trying to figure out how to resolve this inner frustration, this conflict, this divisiveness that is going to make way for progressive new ideas, especially because around this time, Jupiter and Neptune are coming together, which I don't want to get into, but is a time for some kind of creative evolution as a society. And so the fact that these are occurring at the same time, I think can show a lot about a new chapter emerging from a really frustrating old chapter.
We don't want to overwhelm the audience with all the context of all the other things, but to kind of reframe and look at that for a little moment is like, we just came out of all this Pisces energy that's given us a lot of visions and imagination to open up maybe different doorways and things that we felt very disconnected. And this is the moment where we're having to really make an adjustment period for solidified change. And, Saturn needs those directions. And I don't want to sound redundant here, but it's also like, Aquarius can almost kind of try any experiment to get it done, but we need to kind of position and pivot ourselves to something that might be a revolutionary new form of connection. And so the rewards on this are grand, because when Saturn and Mars meet up, we're actually solidifying a very deep internal, almost root chakra redistinguishing what the heck we're going to do. And it could be as much as a country changing its financial system. It could be just as much as the way that we've reoperated trade. It's literally a new foundation, so to speak, on literally how we've even run the company for certain businesses, or how we've even run relationships. There's a whole new rebranding almost, in a way, to looking how things are going to be connected with. And when they square the nodes, they're going to be connected to the eclipses. They're going to be connected to how you have been able to find connection. And it's almost like really reseeking what is really making the light bulbs turn on in life. Where is really I'm not really having the foundation to resolve solutions. So, this is where Saturn is your kind of best friend, as heavy as those decisions may be. So it's important to, obviously in the collective field, be ready for whatever you're going to experience, that things are going to be shifting and making new dedications to things. And it will involve the social sphere in a way that even goods are moved. I really think squaring the nodes with Taurus and Uranus kind of in the back door, it's there's a different kind of aspect going on there, but it might revolve to how you're moving goods and how you're connecting to the world in itself from how those experiences are being charted. So it's a big time to make good decisions and look at them as something that needs to be done, so to speak. And it's a lot. I want to keep going on it, but yeah.
Yeah. I like that point about, trade and goods, because Aquarius is kind of like a network, or even a neural network. So it's how the hive mind thinks, and it's also how we operate between each other and connect all of us. And this being at 22 degrees of Aquarius, I looked up the Sabian symbol for it, and it said, a rug placed on the floor for children to play on. And the person was kind of describing what this meant, and they were saying, what's the saying in English? Like, you don't want to have the rug pulled out from under you. So the rug underneath your feet is your place, it's your home, it's your security, and your knowingness of like where you are grounded. And I find that that's really interesting, to combine these ideas of what gives us security and stability and a home, and what kind of connects all of us. And those are the areas in which we can find some changes in order to create more security. But it's going to come first, because it's Mars and Saturn, from a place of insecurity, from a place of feeling displaced. And people in Ukraine are certainly feeling displaced right now. And so this topic is going to be really big. Or, for example, with maybe some issues around like having enough food and resources and things like that. That is our sense of security, quite literally. And so these things are being challenged at this time in order for us to find something like a new way of doing things that actually is going to have more longevity to it, because there's something decaying, there's something expiring in the current situation and the current way that things have developed. And so, for example, Russia and Ukraine just can't keep going on like this. We can't keep going on with our current issues around food shortages and supply chain. And so we're going to have to find these experimental creative solutions to bring these things back together to create that network again, but again, through some level of difficulty getting there.
Yeah.
So,
Well said.
yeah. So I wanted to, is there anything else you want to say about Mars and Saturn?
I really feel like I hit most of that, in my opinion. I mean, we can keep drilling into the history of it, but I really think, we're also in the Aries season. Even this video is being made on the new moon. And when we're in the Aries season, it's giving Mars that extra kind of highlight on what it is that we're taking action on. This is the season to create action. It's in Taurus when we start kind of receiving a little bit more of that kind of Venusian quality of things we've taken action on. So it's going to get an extra punch, in my opinion, when it squares the nodes. It's a calling, and when it says make a big pivot with Saturn squaring the nodes, whoo, owie mama. And it's not like an owie, like it's got to be a bad thing. It's just a really decisive decision. And, I really advise people, there's a quote that I heard that was like really powerful. And it was like, burn the bridges, take the island. Or like burn the boats, take the island. There's some of those big decisions that are going to be on people's plate that, because they square the nodes with Taurus and Scorpio, there could be resolving feelings of scarcity or lack thereof, or some fear or alarming essence. But, I really advise people to be in alignment with the connection of what it is that's going to be more abundant, fruitful. These are the steps, the big moving steps that can change the direction of your destiny. And that's because something about Aquarius ruling in the 11th house would be something that really redistinguishes how you connect to the universe and the world at large. So, and because Saturn's there, it holds a resonance, like a pitch in a vibrational note. So it's like when you're taking action into that vibration, I think that there's something, this gets a little meta, but like that's where Saturn is going to be resonating and holding that position to open up a new forward path on what is being moved. So it's a big decision to take action. The worst decision is not to take action, especially when there might be something. And not to put out fear there, but if there is an essential of goods changing or the environment is changing dramatically, we need to learn to be versatile, which Aquarius really shows us how to do that. And also, last thing to say is Saturn in Aquarius also reinvents the wheel a little bit. It restricts our feeling of that rebel, I'm going to do it just to like try something radical and new, but yet it is still in that essence for you to find a new way of connecting to the world as a whole. So,
all right. So I'm just going to throw out some keywords related to Mars and Saturn, and then I want to talk about very, very briefly where this will fall in your chart depending on your rising sign. So just for some keywords with Mars and Saturn, the conjunction can often create some kind of overthrow. So a change of power, one person being in a monarchy or one person having the control, no longer having the control. So if we're looking at this in Aquarius, it's going to be maybe something more universal, maybe not specific to like maybe not specific to one country. It could be, but it could also be something like you're saying in regards to finances that really actually affects everyone. So like a change in power in terms of where the finances are coming from. A decline, riots and rebellions, things like actual warfare are very typical for Mars and Saturn.
There was a lot of riots and stuff that were happening kind of that time. I mean, we could look more at the Black Lives Matter movement in that kind of time. There was a lot of riots and stuff happening kind of after this conjunction, or kind of in that zone. I think it was in May, but through the Gemini season. Yeah, that was where we had a lot of this active air energy of like, we're restricted and we're frustrated, and if not taking action to free ourselves, that weight of Saturn can be even heavier there. So
yeah. And I think that's a good example kind of a prototype of what you might see in the sign of Aquarius is a riot for, liberation or for more rights for a certain marginalized group, social justice issues. All right. So very, very briefly, we're just going to touch on where Mars and Saturn will conjunct in what house for you. So for Aries rising, it's in the 11th house. So you might see some of these big decision makings or pressure kind of emerge in the area of your future, your friendships, your community, your goals. Is there anything else you want to say about the 11th house?
I mean, when I speak collectively, I usually think of Aries rising. It's definitely going to be how you get your message out to the world, because that's also going to be an aspect to your second house, Aries rising. So like how you make money, what you want to contribute to the world, that goes into a big play. So whatever job you're looking for is like, who am I going to stand in connection to the world?
And it might be a really frustrating time since Mars is your chart ruler. You might feel like you're a lot more blocked or even depressed. My ex is an Aries rising, and he was just talking about how depressed he's been feeling. So that's a potential. You might feel just this weight and this pressure of responsibility or needing to step up and like evolve in some area of your life in order to create that stability or that financial independence. So you might kind of get that pressure on you.
I'd like to say this, and this is just my perspective, but when Saturn and Mars meet up, it's kind of like Mars is training, and then Saturn comes up, the father, the authority figure, whoever it is, the captain of the ship, and lets you know, like, there's some here's your news briefing, we need some directions, and Mars is going to get, like, stopped, re-inundated on what needs to go, and given, like, a new mission, because that alignment has to come take 2 years around, and since it's your ruling planet, it's like redistinguishing who I'm going to be almost for 2 years in a way to recreate my value. And square the nodes. Oh yeah, it's a big one.
All right.
Yeah.
The next one is Taurus rising. So for you guys, the North Node is of course in your first house, and that means it's going to be squaring Mars and Saturn conjunct in your 10th house. So definitely a lot of identity issues and career things coming to the surface. Like, who am I? What's my place in the world? What's the kind of impact that I want to have? What reputation do I want to leave behind? And I think a lot about maybe self-worth, because Taurus issues can tend to be about that. Like, what's my value as a person? Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to say?
I mean, yeah, you hit it on the head. Very 10th house position is looking at status. Who do you want to be in the world? What's the title? What's the position of authority? Your biggest goals ever.
So if you are like working for someone, for example, the 10th house being bosses and hierarchy, you could maybe face either this need to level up and take on more responsibility, or even being challenged by existing authorities. So that could be just an example of what you might experience.
I would say you're going to be taking probably some of the more executive decisions of all the other signs, because this squares your first house. This squares you. And with its 10th house Saturn and the chief and ruling dignity, we're looking at like where you have to take, where are you moving the boat? If you're the captain, 10th house, Mars and Saturn conjunct, this is real decisions. So there's some authority figures that have to make some big moves, and where they're going in their life and what they're doing for their proximity. People are looking up to you, and they want to know where you're going to take the ship.
And then
Gemini rising.
Gemini, my beautiful Geminis. This conjunction's happening in your 9th house and squaring the nodes in your 12th house. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What do you? Both of these houses are actually quite spiritual. So
I'm getting a hunch, and this is a left field thing to just share. I think Kamala might be put into a bigger position as president potentially or something, because she's a Gemini rising. Just had to throw that out there. I just find the ninth house is an opportunity. It's really the horizons on what you need to study, what you need to broaden, and coming in the 12th house to receive the things that are kind of awaiting for you to receive and appreciate what's already in your sector. Like own into the foundation of things you kind of already have set up. They're already like surrendering to the process, basically. Some part I want to share.
yeah, and the ninth house I think is also, of course, related to things like foreign travel, studying more things, your belief system. So you might be challenged in some of these areas to make some changes or to take on more responsibility or to just kind of do things a little bit differently. Then we have Cancer. This conjunction is happening in your eighth house, which is a little bit of a more challenging placement for this. I think it can definitely bring about a lot of fears because the eighth house is already a house of crisis and trauma, and then Mars and Saturn being the two planets associated with fear and anxiety and just negative experiences. I think it could kind of force you to face some of these things, maybe some of your own insecurities, some of the ways that you might have felt like your demons have held you back in some kind of way, and maybe confronting old fears to put them to rest. So that's one potential explanation.
There might also be things that are restricting you, or you're recognizing the things that have been restricting you, even subconscious blocks, pardon me, in like situations where we need to make bigger pivots and bigger directions. There also could be a moment where we need to really hunker down for a partner potentially. If it's in alignment, it might be really called to is to move forward. Because of the eighth house, Saturn and Mars really looking at what you want to create and connect with in your world. Is this a place of legacies too? Like it's a really big reality check, Cancer rising, to see where are we going right now from here on out? Because there's in different ways of the other signs, but like for you in the eighth house, I see something as like just where are we really tying ourselves to, and what needs to be dropped or disconnected from to make way for the new.
Yeah, and then the eighth house is also a house of intimacy, as well as shared resources and even power play dynamics. So you might see some of those things, some of the issues of your life kind of crop up around those dynamics. So just kind of, do your best to face them with courage and know that if you do experience some weird emotional kind of things going on right now, that's really normal. And this is a huge growth opportunity for you to kind of do something different in the way that you express your vulnerability and personal power.
Would agree with that.
All right, Leo rising. Well, why don't you do this one?
Leo risings. Okay. Well, this is happening in our 7th house, Leo rising, depending on the chart. And the Aries season for the 9th house, this is also pulling us because I'm a Leo rising with you guys. This is pulling us to our destinies and the commitments that we're really making with the people in our lives. This could be soul contracts. It could be like business contracts, relationships, potentially marriages for some people. But it's like really being able to have that commitment to looking at what we're going to connect with moving forward in the future. So it's also redistinguishing who are the people, and we kind of say this analogy, who are the people in your kingdom that you feel like you can really connect with that hold a different solidification to where you want to go create. The North Node's in your 10th house, Leo rising. And so like we want to look at like what is really going to bring us to our high accord of really creating abundance. We need to make sure that we're connecting with the right people, and there might be some big shifts and big decisions moving into our social sphere. So making sure we got the best people to get the mission on the road. We need the best crew to make sure that we can reach where we're trying to co-create.
Love it. Up next, Virgo rising. So this is happening in your 6th house, Virgo risings.
Nice.
Also considered a somewhat challenging house to have it in, especially if you have any existing health conditions. Having the 2 malefics here, especially if it's, aspecting a personal planet, could maybe result in having some health complications or some things to kind of face. The sixth house is also the house of responsibilities as well. And so you might find that there are certain burdens in your life that you're taking on that feel not unnecessary, but maybe uncomfortable. Like they feel burdensome. That's typically what I see with the sixth house is you're putting a lot of effort into something and not always feeling like you're getting it back, or not always like getting the pat on the back. Like it's almost like this kind of selfless devotion to whatever it is you're working on. And so with Mars and Saturn here, you might find that you're actually a little bit more frustrated with that than usual. You know, if you're a caretaker for someone, you might feel like you can't do this any longer. You need to find a new approach to something. And so the way that you handle responsibility, or even your job, if you're working for someone, you might just kind of reach this pinnacle of frustration where you're like, I can't just keep on with this job. I have to do something differently in my day-to-day routine, in the way I take care of my health and my body and my mental health. There's something that has to shift within me to feel like I'm actually living in alignment. So this could be a little bit more of a sensitive one.
Virgo risings. Busy, 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 busy. Crazy. Literally also, like to what Courtney says, is take care of your health. Make sure you can take your game on your health on a tip-top shape. We might be solidified in that one routine, but, you know, just making sure that you have some versatility with this, because, you know, there's going to be, usually 6 houses some added stress time, but you get the best ideas. And I sometimes see the best work moments for Virgo to activate with that Aquarius energy to solve problems and initiate new things. So when Mars is here in your 6th house, which is one of your ruling houses, we're also being able to realize like there's a lot of work you can create. There's a lot of new connections you can make. Stay on your networking game. But these are definitely going to pivot to really look at what is the reality you're really in. Look at that day-to-day life. Look at how this reality is looking. Are you working late night days? Are you a total morning person? Are you working remotely? Are you in a cave all the time? Like, you know, what is the reality of like how you're operating your life? Will be really to look. And another thing is that this is your pivot. This is your pivot to really look at what needs to change in my day-to-day life to make these dreams and make this work a reality. So if it's something totally not in alignment and we need a total different remake, this is the time to call that shot, you know? And at the same time, though, it's also if your health game or something that's operating in your day-to-day life is not functioning, we need to make a big pivot here. And that will set you on a track for success. So,
amen. And then up next, we have Libra rising. So for my beautiful Libra risings, this Mars-Saturn conjunction is happening in your 5th house and squaring the nodes along the 8th and the 2nd house. So I don't know. I mean, if you have children, there can be, kind of talking about responsibility, there can be some things that come up in regards to your children that have to be dealt with, that requires a new way of parenting, a new way of looking at the situation. If you have, if you're even dating, it might ask you to look at the way that you've approached your dating life and maybe some of the ideas or the checklists that you have for people or your beliefs about dating. Like it might really challenge you to go within and question what is there. And it could challenge you through having repeat difficult experiences. That's kind of what Mars and Saturn is like. Okay, I'm over having this experience. How can I do something differently? The 5th house is also our creative projects. So the ways in which we pursue our hobbies, our joys, our pleasures, and that bring things to life that feel like they're a representation of us, you might have to find also a new way of doing that and challenge yourself to think outside of the box.
Amen. Libra risings, you've had this Saturn in your 5th house. And it's funny because we're trying to reach to a new level of ecstasy and love and connection. This is also a new moon in Aries. This is your relationship time to make sure that you're being honored and connecting and standing up for the relationships that matter in your world. To connect with what Courtney said, though, you're probably going to have to change the direction and the way you've gone about with your relationships. This is a little bit more executive action for what love is to you and where your love projects are going. We're definitely, Libra, you're one of the more romantic signs in the zodiac. It's also, there's probably been a big restriction with love. There's probably been a lot of areas where this has been difficult in finding the ways that you've been able to connect. Mars and Saturn here in this 5th house is almost restricting, not the biggest time to play, kind of, if you will, and kind of be in that romantic area. At the same time, though, it's also where can you, again, pivot, but put yourself in the playing field, change the way that you might be even looking for love in whatever kind of places, because the way you might be receiving connection needs a different charge. It needs a change. And seeing how you've been going about relationships might need a total different makeover, so to speak. It's also dealing to your 8th house, like, who do you really want to receive from? What are the values that you really want to connect to in your future? If these were times to make some bigger decisions on who's in your life, these are like, who are the people that really connect and light you up and let you be yourself to be free to connect in the world? So, different than the Leo risings, you're much more like who lets you feel alive and who's building you up and who's fanning your flames, so to speak, to let you really connect to a deeper and better world.
I'll just add one more thing, because the 5th house is often associated with indulgence and not thinking ahead. And so I will also add, with the malefics here, there can be some negative consequences of past actions of overindulging or not thinking ahead. And so this could be a time in which you are kind of faced with some reality where you have to check yourself before you wreck yourself type of situation.
With those with children and those in the aspect of like, there's definitely I love what you said, because there's like children definitely might be playing a part where you might need to make some either sacrifices or decisions for your children, and or if you're thinking about that, what does that look like for you in your future? So this is like kind of an aspect, like I want to create things. Where are the fields that you want to create that with? And so there's a really different change up on that is to add on to that. So
awesome. All right. My favorites, Scorpio rising.
right on.
This is happening in your 4th house. So Mars and Saturn conjunct in your 4th house. So this could be a time in which you are not fully satisfied with the status quo of your home and family life. So you might feel like you want to move. You might feel like your current partnership or your current stable place is no longer meeting certain needs. You might find that, ongoing frustrations build and accumulate and make you realize I need to make some new decisions about what is going to make me feel better and more at home. Because there can be something that it's either like stagnating there and you're not growing, which is awful for a Scorpio. You
might think it's safe, but like you need to change up the Scorpio cave or wherever you've been lingering.
Yeah.
Teasingly.
and you do have the South Node in your sign. So there is this element of needing to release something that you maybe have held on to for comfort. So allowing yourself to kind of check in with what actually feels like it's growing with me and evolving with me. And maybe if your home or your family or some kind of relationship or even emotional tendency is starting to act more as a restricting cage or something that's keeping you from expanding, then that's something worth looking at.
Yeah, you definitely said it. This is definitely time for family and Scorpio rising. Like, are you being able to really connect to the social groups? This is a time to kind of like really like reconnect with the people that are closest to you, that really you want to see and move forward in the future. This could be a moving situation or a changing up of your living situation. And the North Node is in your 7th house to represent like remembering like who are the people to hang on to that really help you connect to what you want to receive in this life, And so this is a little bit of humbling yourself, that like, getting out of your own way and look at the reality that you're living in, pave way that you might be busy trying to re-network a little bit, like reconnect with people, really like deepening friendships to maybe best friends, or like really looking at what our relationships kind of need to kind of be reconnected with. And that can affect your emotional world if you're not feeling the support or you're not feeling the connection that you need for yourself. Sometimes it is disconnecting and re-distinguishing how we find connection. So It could be very emotional for sure, but I think Courtney's on the money with it. Like, this potentially could be a move. This could potentially be like a different request from your family or something in that accord. But like, we're really needing to make a different decision on like who's in our proximity in our personal world. How are we connecting to our personal life? Yeah.
And Saturn is really closely tied to the past, so it could also stimulate or bring up ancestral or family issues and patterns from the past to be released and let go of, so that you can create deeper connections with people without some of those walls up or some of those stories coming up in those new relationships. All right, now let's look at Sagittarius rising. Mars conjunct Saturn is happening in your third house of communication. So this has been an area where you guys have been really focusing on for a while, is how am I conveying my thoughts? And do I even like my thoughts? Do I want to change those? And with Mars here and Saturn there, you might start to feel like you're a little bit frustrated with yourself. If this is an internal process, because it could be like with your siblings, you might find that there's more arguments, or even within your community. But if it's internal, you could be really frustrated with kind of reliving certain patterns, either with communicating with your partner or certain thought patterns that feel like they're kind of just so negative and not really helping you move forward. And it's a time to examine this in a way where you can get out of this rut if you're stuck in one, by making some big changes.
Yeah, Sag rising, we're busy bumblebee all over, all mind racing a million miles an hour, but is it really getting you traction? You need to ask yourself, are you getting traction on creating that physical reality that you want? You have North Node in the 6th house in Taurus. This is about having a great, abundant physical reality, physical lifestyle, physical health. And so making sure we reconnect to those thoughts, because, this is definitely some heavy thoughts, a lot of pressure on the mind. Research, definitely reading can be a big benefit here, but it's also like pivoting you. Are you escaping with these? Are you on track? Are you lost in the bubble of thoughts and people and just connecting because it's a fun thing? Or are you really having a big mental decision or a mental breakthrough, or maybe in a block that helps remind you where you're connecting? And so this Aries season's in your 5th house. We want to unlock our heart and find the people that are worth connecting to. And that might be closer than you think. But the truth is, are we connecting and speaking our truth? Are we committing to, are we getting appreciated to connect to our proximity, or are we just kind of escaping? So this is kind of our time to really see, is my message and my energy, am I getting back the value that I'm putting in? Really should be looking at that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add with the 3rd house is there's always some element of busyness. It's funny because you said busy bee. And I would just say with Saturn in here, to make sure that the things that you're busy with are of substance.
Yes.
Am I doing things that are really moving me forward long term, or am I scattering my energy?
Yes.
And that you can scatter your energy through overthinking, or through action, or through speaking. Whatever you're doing, make sure that what is externalizing, or whatever you're spending in terms of energy is actually justified and fruitful, or has a potential to be fruitful.
Yeah. 2 seconds on that is just you can get excited about all the things around you and be doing all this mental energy, but like I said, if you can have 20 friends, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have a limit on friends, but your associates, are you really connecting to the 3 most prosperous things, or are you really focusing in on things that are bringing you results, numbers? The 6th house is very number, what's kind of working out for me, instead of just releasing it all over the place. You don't want to take yourself for being cheap. You're worthy, you're valuable. See where those seeds can go and how you can repivot yourself to reconnecting to where you're valuable and valued. Yeah.
Speaking of value, Capricorn rising, for you guys, this conjunction with Saturn and Mars is happening in your 2nd house of values.
Boom.
Of finances. And so I definitely think a lot of you guys are maybe having to face some harsh realities around how you've managed your finances or managed your physical goods. Or it could be how you maybe have been overly focused on that as a Capricorn rising, overly focused on security, and maybe even questioning what is security, because these are your values, right? Questioning your values, facing them again, and maybe looking at them through a new lens or a new light.
Mm-hmm. Capricorn risings, I really think you got the great time to, I want to tell you personal, that it's time that you realize you're a badass and that you're valuable, you're beautiful, you're sexy, and that you got everything you need to have not only just a great proximity of friends and live in your personal life, and get some of that, like, you know, more kind of ambitious, maybe even competitive fun and flavor in your life. You know, this is a 4th house transit, North Node in the 5th. But Mars and Saturn, which we're really talking about here, is in your 2nd house of, are we creating the value? Are we owning our value? Because you're probably very valuable. And I know that Saturn in the 2nd house can feel that deep restriction and feeling limited and feeling like I really can't see how I can create and connect in my world. And you very much can. There's actually more things around you if you can open up and let yourself really receive in the way that you can see yourself. Like, you've got so much to offer. It's time to let people kind of like really see that and let yourself shine that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it could be helpful to ask yourself, you know, am I working so hard to prove my worth? Because that's a really typical Capricorn theme, is very much tying our worldly success with our worth as individuals, when our worth is innate from being born. And so I think it could be really helpful to look at that kind of storyline around money, finances, work, self-worth, in order to find something that feels like a healthier and more realistic balance for you.
Amen.
All right. And then Aquarius, this is a big one. Aquarius risings. This Mars-Saturn conjunction is happening in your 1st house. You want to take it away, Ricky, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I've said this a lot, and I love my Aquarius, and I have Aquarius rising. Y'all are amazing. This is a time where you really are looking at like showing up for yourself, showing up for who you are, declaring who you want to be in the world, and not kind of avoiding that a little bit. You know, it's kind of like wanting to be parts of everything, but really looking at what gets declared. I mean, the image that I'm kind of receiving is Abraham Lincoln, which was an Aquarius rising, Aquarius, 1st house, made those pivotal decisions that did something, and we're not really getting semantic on transits here, but like made those decisions to like end slavery, and was remembered for those areas of his life from those decisions that were paved upon. These are things where Saturn and Mars in your 1st house is really a captain to say, like, who do you want to be in this game? And to go out there and go show the world what it is. In a funny way, though, this isn't about being so conceived about your career life. Maybe there's been a great career life there, but it's also like redefining who you are to see where you can be happy and fulfilled. This is more of the 4th house, North Node. I was born with this too. Look at what's personally fulfilling to you, and that you get the best of both worlds here. But like, it's also letting yourself, like, where can you really be vulnerable? Where you can really slow down and be enjoyed and received by people that really understand your value. It's time, Aquarius, that we really have to make some bigger decisions on that and really communicate that out in the world. Get involved, network, make some calls, and show up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, what are we moving through right now? We're moving through a time of reorganizing things. And like we said at the beginning, experimenting, having new solutions, being progressive, fighting for people's rights and equality and a safe place to be. And who better to lead the way than someone who is an Aquarius rising? So you are embodying what change is needed in society right now. So you're understanding yourself, your purpose, the way that you can shine your light and affect the world in a really positive way is kind of what this is all about. And not letting yourself be your own worst enemy, and not letting yourself get in the way of this impact, because you were put here in this specific time to help shift and move society. And if you're doubting yourself, if you're questioning yourself or blocking yourself in some way, you might not allow yourself to live up to that full potential. But you have it within you. It's just about, recognizing it. And so sometimes we might have to, at this time, face a little bit of those demons to surpass them and get to what it is you're here to do in this lifetime.
Amen. Amen.
All right, Pisces. So
Pisces rising, last but not least.
This is in your 12th house, Mars conjunct Saturn. So also another challenging house. The 6th, 8th, and 12th houses tend to be the ones where we struggle a little bit more. The 12th is associated with oftentimes loss. So sometimes, especially with Mars and Saturn, which can also kind of indicate loss, there might be something that is taken away, or something that you need to let go of or surrender to in order to experience some kind of karmic lesson or greater understanding of your soul and kind of what you're meant to learn and experience in this lifetime.
There's a lot of interesting things to say about this, because we have the two malefics sitting in the 12th house, which, it can feel very isolating, very disconnected. Pisces, though, I feel like you're really needed right now. Your circumstance for wherever they've brought you in a place where like you're being called upon for areas of people that are in your proximity to chime in. They're right under your nose, or they're right in your arena, and the knowledge that you have is being brought to like be able to, maybe even in karmic contracts, so to speak, with people that might need what you have to share and to be understood and valued for who you are. And there's moments where like maybe we really can grab the wheel on this one a little bit and find that those connections are there. It's been difficult to deal with Saturn in the 12th house, and feeling that we need to disconnect to find ourselves, and also realizing though, like Aquarius is also, we need the rays. If Leo is like the heart, the rays of light is Aquarius, and these are things that you're here to illuminate, as if like in the ocean, those shimmers of light that almost bring you the magical essence that you radiate from. And so these are moments where you're being asked to show up and connect and find a new way to connect your value, so you can redistinguish how you can, if you've not been connecting to your environment like you wish, you have the ability, you have the moment, you're about to have a lot transfigure for you and illuminate you what you're capable of. You need to realize, are you being received by your environment? And so you might need to disconnect. You also might need to plug in, see when it calls for you.
Yeah, I think oftentimes having Mars and Saturn in the 12th, besides feeling isolated and maybe having to lose something, there can be this moment of I forgot the word I was literally just thinking of. There's a lot. There's basically a lot here. There's the element of having to maybe face some of your own demons, not in the same way as like the 8th house where it's much more obvious, but the subtle ways that you subvert your own power, the subtle ways that you give your own essence and your power away to a substance or to a person or to a situation that you might have to face very blankly in order to not repeat these kind of self-sabotaging cycles, which can be present in the 12th house.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I got what you were trying to say. It's also like, where are your subconscious blocks, Pisces rising, about where are you duking yourself and when you're disconnecting, like where subconscious programs are you're creating the environment to disconnect from your own mind. And this is Aquarius, the rules of mind. It's like saying that we're not able to show up or connect to here in this way. Like there's a communication and mental subconscious patterning that is going through a metamorphosis right now. And so for Pisces rising, like making sure we check ourselves on like how we're subconsciously disconnecting is sometimes that's proper with the Aquarius in the 12th house. We need to learn to disconnect. And other times really we're just disconnecting because there's something that we're saying we need to block ourselves from. But truly this is about North Node Taurus is creating stuff in your environment with people very close to you. So like you might be asked to connect. You might be asked for things that have already been pre-set up to moments where you're being called upon to really shine up. You've waited for these. You've called them in. They've set up, and this 12th house area, there's work that needs to be completed. you know, and this helps redistinguish the moments we're coming into the first house by next season, who you really get to be and want, and the people that get to be there with you as well.
Awesome. So there will be time codes in the description box below. And if you want to book a reading with either one of us, I will also have that linked in the description box below.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks,
y'all.
guys.
Take care.